So, hello and welcome to the Replimat, a more often than not regular podcast or chatcast in which two nerds, wonderful, handsome men that we are, apparently, go through Star Trek and Doctor Who in chronological order. Star Trek, Deep Space Nine specifically, with Tim doing so for the first time. This week we are back on DS9. We're on episode 20 of season 2, the Marquis, part 1, with the teleplay by James Crocker, a story by Rick Berman, Michael Piller, Jerry Taylor, and James Crocker, directed by David Livingston and first transmitted on the 24th of April 1994. And according to Netflix, the worst is feared when a Cardassian freighter, the Bok Nor, explodes while departing the station. Long-time fans will be aware that those names of the story by credit are producers of Star Trek and the co-creators of Star Trek Voyager. So can we guess what this episode's going to be doing?
Where do they get their ideas from?
It's subtle. It's subtle. Where indeed? A history most, apparently.
Where indeed?
So, Tim.
Andy. Andy.
I forgot to do that. Tell me. Begin.
Yeah, I enjoyed this episode a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, no, I did. It seems like the first time for ages that we've had an episode that's concentrated a lot on Cisco. Everyone else having the odd little moment here and there, but yeah, I really liked where this episode was going, and I liked that there wasn't too much. Although there's obviously the Cardassian threat over the whole thing. I liked that it wasn't completely black and white, and you weren't exactly sure what was going on, and whether the Federation angle was the correct one the whole way through. So there's a nice that sort of political element was really good. I possibly could have done with slightly less sort of sex talk. I have to say, but
It was a bit.
There's that scene at the beginning between Dax and Kira, which is, I don't know. I wanted to like it because it's nice to see those characters just kind of like chatting normally, but I don't know. It wasn't it didn't come across as a very natural conversation.
It does seem.
It felt awkward and uncomfortable.
It does seem to me, in this episode in particular, everybody's talking about sex in some way or another.
Yeah,
there's just a real, obsession. I mean, that particular conversation with Kira and Dax that was happening behind me, it was an interesting one. I mean, it's meant to be funny and all this women's talk, but I get a sense it's very obviously female dialogue conversation written by a man, because it seems to me, and I've never been a woman, so I don't know, and I'm not around these women when they have such conversations, but I got a sense that it was a very male conversation to have. Where guys are just always talking about women and just objectifying, and it seems like, I don't know, maybe women do this, I don't know. It's possible, I suppose, but it felt very male, the way they was talking about it all.
Male gaze.
That's the vibe I got, which was a shame.
I mean,
But
you kind of expect it from Quark.
oh god, well that's the problem, isn't it? You do expect from Quark, and unfortunately, him being a bit of a sleaze around women, that's just who he is. He hasn't quite got out of that yet. But again, that's fine because it's not like there are not people like that in the real world. There are many people like that in the real world who just are quite sleazy around women, and it's never played as if it's an okay thing necessarily. It's always like our characters almost always look and go, oh, so it's never like said, oh, that's fine. That's perfectly normal. That's fine, Quark. That's fine. That's fine. Did you find having the background from Journey's End help this time?
Yes, I did. Yeah, very much so. I think it would. I think there would have been questions that I would have had at the end of the episode if I hadn't watched that Next Gen episode first. So it's so that very much an episode that rewards viewers who will, I suppose regular viewers of both series or fans of Star Trek who will watch everything that gets put out. I don't think you I don't think you necessarily need to have watched that to what in order to watch the Marquis. I just think I got a little bit more out of the episode having that background, and probably was able to concentrate a bit more on what was going on rather than thinking to myself, I wonder what's going on here. So when
did this happen? Why is this the first we're hearing about it?
Yeah, so there's value to be had from doing that. So that was a good shout. And at the end, I wanted to watch the next episode straight away, but I'm not allowed to. So that's a good sign. That's a good sign as well. So can we talk about the ending and the cliffhanger, or do you need to talk about other stuff first?
Hey man, we can talk about whatever you want as long as it's this episode.
Because the reveal that it's it's what's his name?
Cal.
He was Commodore,
Cal Hudson.
Commodore Cal Hudson.
Just a commander.
Oh, just commander.
No, just a commander.
Same as Sisko.
I think he was just a commander. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was only a commander.
So
sure.
When he turned up at the beginning of or towards the beginning of the episode, I'm thinking, okay, so I'm assuming that he's got to have some pivotal role in this. He's not just some. If he was just someone who'd popped in to give an official view, they wouldn't have spent so long with him. They wouldn't have made him that pally with Sisko. Old mates who go back years and friends with Curzon Dax as well. Because of all that, I'm just I'm suspicious, always suspicious when these other Starfleet officers arrive. I'm thinking, there's got to be something going on here. Was it one of the original series films? Wasn't there a Starfleet admiral or something who went? But was it? I wonder if it was it in number 6?
Star Trek
in the Undiscovered Country.
There was, yeah, it definitely was. And Star Trek has a history, and it's still true today. Whenever Starfleet officers turn up, especially those of a higher rank or a similar rank to the main character, inevitably they turn out to be dodgy. It's a rare thing when you get a Starfleet captain or admiral or commander or whoever who turns up and they're actually good. It's a very rare thing. But yeah, the one you're referring to is Star Trek 6. where Admiral Cartwright is part of the conspiracy to assassinate the Klingon High Chancellor.
Yeah.
That's actually has even more impact because we met him previously in Star Trek 4, so we knew him as a character, which is quite rare in Trek films, certainly.
Yeah.
Whereas this, of course, I think this is one of these situations where I think this character of Cal, maybe it would have worked better had it been one of Sisko's friends I would either mentioned before or seen before. I'm sure we've seen at least one of Sisko's friends by this point. So we've heard mention of several. So maybe if it'd been somebody we'd at least referred to before, it might have had a bit more weight to the whole, but when it just turns up for the first time, never mentioned before, of course, you're going to be like, he's obviously not going to be an okay Starfleet officer because this is Star Trek.
Hey, my old friend, who I never talk about.
Issue with this character. Yeah. My issue with this character, it's not really the character, because again, that's just a Star Trek trope, I suppose, and that's fine because you expect it. My issue with the character, well, again, not with the character, it's the actor. I have never bought his performance, his delivery of the lines, just his general presence. And I'm not saying he's a bad actor because I've not seen him in anything else, but apparently he's quite a well-regarded actor, apparently.
Right.
But every time I watch this, I'm like, I don't buy the relationship with Sisko because the chemistry, I don't think is there on screen. So one with Dax feels extremely forced. But his line delivery, I mean, sure, it's partly accent maybe, and that can obviously affect some. But his line delivery always feels very off and very, I don't know, it feels like he's only just learned the lines. Because it's never a very natural flow to the way he talks to Sisko. I don't find anyway. But again, that could just be me it could just be the way this particular actor delivers. It could just be how he performs. That's just his natural performance. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because certainly
I can see what you mean, and that he was slightly stilted at times, and but I kind of associate that with other Starfleet officers turning up in things that I've seen. I have a sort of mental checklist. I realised as I was watching this, and he was kind of ticking most of the boxes. Slightly stilted delivery, or sort of not necessarily false pally banter, but kind of slightly forced pally banter, talking about history with our regular Starfleet officer, and just all of that. So he just ticked all the boxes for me. So,
I mean, the aspect of that I did like is the fact that it gives a nice bit of more, a nice flavour, more background of Sisko that we've had bits of before.
Yeah.
But it's always nice to learn a bit more about Sisko's history and just little nuggets.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's because we didn't get to see Jake in this episode. I wonder if it would have been different if Jake had a scene with Cal there as well. Whether that would have sort of added a bit of
interestingly,
added a bit of weight to the whole thing, but unfortunately, Jake was sitting on the promenade or whatever it was, watching Bajoran women again, which in an episode where there's already too much talk about sex and stuff, it's it just seemed kind of an unnecessary additional detail. But there we go.
Here's an interesting factoid for you. Here's an interesting factoid about Sisko, Jake Sisko in particular. The original premise for this story, their way of trying to obviously break it before they got into the whole Marquis of it all, is the original premise was it's going to be a Jake story, particularly, where he becomes friends with some mercenary. and that was going to lead them into the whole what's going on in the DMZ. But obviously, they changed their mind and made it more of a Skull and his friend thing instead. And as a result, Jake was just not even in the episode. So, the episode of Jake, it's interesting when you consider that originally this would have been a Jake-led episode in the sense of our way into what was going on. But so the reverse happened where he didn't appear at all.
There's so many
several times.
Yeah, I wonder if that's why there were so many writers or storyliners or whatever at the beginning, because like a screen full of of credits.
Well, that's because as I say, Pillar, Jerry Taylor, and Rick Berman. Berman's the producer of Star Trek. He's basically the one who takes over from Gene Roddenberry. Michael Pillar is a co-creator of DS9, and him and Jerry Taylor with Mick Berman will be the ones who co-create or are co-creating Voyager at this point in our timeline. So that's obviously because this episode, just like the Journey's End, is all about setting up the premise of Voyager. Because the reference we get to the Badlands, which is where they go at the end, and how ships have been apparently gone missing there. I'm really out of focus here. Don't know why. But if I sit back, maybe I'll focus in.
So I thought I had the wrong glasses on.
No, it's just I'm underwater. 1 second. If I go for a swim. Right. Go focus. Nope. 1 second.
Weird, isn't it?
Back in the room. There I am. Right. So what was I saying? Yeah. So they're setting up basically Voyager here, which is why they were so involved in this one. The whole thing about the Badlands at the end, which is where they go to that little planet, and they mention that ships have been missing. Some ships have been reported missing in the Badlands. This is again Voyager, because that is the whole how Voyager ends up away from Starfleet in the beginning of Voyager in the Badlands. It goes missing. So again, it's all setting up, like the whole thing with the Marquis and the whole American Indians thing. It's all setting up the various aspects of Voyager, which is a good idea. I like that they don't dump it all in Voyager's first episode. I mean, Jetson a lot of it ultimately, but they're building it up bit by bit in various next gen and DS9 episodes. So those who are watching the whole lot, when they get to Voyager, it'll feel quite almost earned, I suppose. As opposed to just like, here's a new premise, get used to it. I think it works. It's nice. I think, like we said during the watching, there's a nice level of world building in this story in particular, and of course that previous TNG episode. That's not typical Star Trek continuity where it's all in your face and direct references to TNG characters or really out of place references. It's more subtle, and you get a sense when you're watching it that it's actually a universe that they all live in, which I appreciate, because it's like that's how you do continuity, where you feel actually we're just part of this one big shared universe, as it were. Where it's subtle, where to the point where I suppose if you're just watching DS9, you wouldn't necessarily need to know that these events are talking about with the DMZ and what happened and why they gave it away. You wouldn't necessarily need to know it was in a TNG episode. The background, I think you're given enough to know this is the situation. However, if you are a TNG watcher and you're like, okay, this is actually quite interesting now because I know exactly what happened and how,
Yeah, but so you it frees you up to concentrate on some of the detail rather than trying to ponder, the background, as it were. So
absolutely, agreed.
This scene behind me. I can see behind you. Yes.
Yeah, this scene behind me because this is, I know this one got a lot of response from you there. I think the period of
I was just about to say I really like Goldie Cap.
They've seen them together. I think we've had obviously Descartes been back and forth quite a few times since episode 1, but this is the first time we've seen him and Cisco share real screen time together, and it's such a joy to watch.
In a more a slightly more relaxed environment as well. It's not just they're not kind of posturing across across the desk or anything. It's they can be a little freer with each other. I really like that, and I liked Gold Ducat consistently throughout the episode. I like the fact that he was there unofficially. That you don't. It's not the episode focuses more on or rather uses the Cardassians more as like a background unknown threat rather than them just wading in saying, what are you doing to sort this out? The fact that everyone's constantly going, we haven't heard from the Cardassians, what are they doing? And it raises the stakes, it raises the threat of the Cardassians so much better. You get a much better idea of the kind of the wariness or the fear that they have of the Cardassians through that, because it's not there in your face. It's that fear of the unknown thing, and then Ducat just appears, and then suddenly you're like, well, hang on, so they're kind of working kind of under the radar and a little unofficially as well, and this is interesting. So it's using them in a slightly different way. It's world building for the Cardassians as well, character building for Gold Ducat, and it's not a story and a script by numbers, and suddenly it makes it that much more interesting.
And I think it just adds complexity to it, or to those layers, layers to the Cardassians. We know lots about their culture through Garak and various other Cardassians throughout the series so far, but learning more of the I don't want to say the softer side, but the nuances of Cardassians that, like you said, Cardassians are doing this thing, maybe, and the official line is this, and yet still Ducat's like, I'm here unofficially because I've got a bit of a vested interest in this as well. And his vested interest is obviously he's got his very definite idea of what Cardassia should be. And he's out there to make sure, that Cardassia's being, protected or, I don't know, being realised, I guess. Whereas, of course, Gulliver is very much just doing a very Cardassian thing of talking absolute crap and doing whatever suits his agenda.
Yes.
I think the relationship with Ducat and Sisko, in particular this episode, I think it's solid writing, and the performances, like you said, the chemistry. They've got the sort of chemistry that, frankly, Sisko and Cal should have on screen. Where you're watching it and you're like, I believe this. I believe their relationship. I don't think, Cal and Sisko, you don't get that. But again, it goes, you cast actors and they don't always have chemistry with each other. And that can obviously be a detriment to any production. But then you get a reverse where you've got Mark Lamo and Avery Brooks who just absolutely bounce off each other. It's not just in the writing. It's absolutely in their performance, because you can give this dialogue to any actor, but if they don't spark, then you're like, I don't buy it.
Yeah, the scene in the world quarters was another good one. It started off in the quarters, and then it kind of carried on into the runabout. But just all of that was just a delight. It was great.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in this. What I like,
it's not perfect, episode by a long shot, but good, but
No, no,
but
no.
a good solid episode, a good Cisco episode, and enough
Very
of
much.
a mystery, and engaging enough for the audience, I think, to make you get to the end and think, I'd like to watch the next episode now, because
Yeah.
I'm really invested in
See
what's
what
going on here.
I mean, I agree absolutely with that. But what I also like is it's nice, and we've had this with DS9 already. It's nice when they have a multi-part story, be it 2 or 3, whatever. That's not a cliffhangery end of season thing, because inevitably with Star Trek, certainly TV, I suppose, when they got a cliffhanger at the end of a season, they haven't necessarily worked out the next part of that story yet. They're usually like, oh,
Yeah,
we'll work that out during our summer break. But when you get like a multi-part within a season, or at the beginning of season, whatever, in this case towards the end now, they've obviously worked out what the story is. They know. They've basically, I think, basically worked out this is the story, this is where we're going. So the first half is as strong as the second half because they can lay it all out, knowing they'll pick all this stuff up later. And I'm
yeah,
underwater again, excuse me.
you are. Yes,
Blimey.
it's
I don't
weird.
know,
I
I'm
wonder why
pulling
it's
something for a
happening.
camera and it keeps on losing focus. Don't know, it
Yeah,
doesn't do it to you. Mind you, I haven't
no,
got the same camera, so. I mean,
no, I
autofocus is
haven't.
great, but it'd be better when it works. See? Remember, I bought this camera because I thought, yeah, this is much better, but, well, I didn't have quite as much issue with this as last time. But anyway. We're not here to talk about me underwater. Yeah. What was you saying?
You were talking about them doing multi-parters in the middle of a
Yeah.
season, so they actually know where they're going with it,
During
and
the season, yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
that's
And I think
that's
it
very.
does
I didn't
benefit
realise
a lot
that they
because
did that
you
with season end cliffhangers, and potentially kind of got to a point because
more often
the
than not. Well, yeah, the very first.
that's weird. The resolution, you might be working
Well,
through what you want the resolution to be, and then think, but we really should have done this in the first part because that would,
well,
and then you're screwed.
you've seen. I believe you've seen Best of Both Worlds. Yeah, the next gen
Yes,
two-parter where Picard becomes a Borg.
I do. Yeah, that was the
Well,
one that everyone was
that
talking
was the
about at
first
school.
Star Trek. Yeah, that was the first. That was the first proper Star Trek two-parter.
Yeah.
And Michael Piller, who was one of the storyliners for this, he wrote that story, believing that he was now leaving Star Trek in between seasons. So this was his last, and he wrote this amazing cliffhanger. Like literally, I wrote the story into Qantas then, and he's like, right, not my problem. Let whoever's writing part 2, let them work out to get out of it.
Oh, what an ass!
Of course, it backfired because then he was offered the role of executive. He was oh no, it backfires because he was then offered the role of executive producer for series 4, so he came back for
Right.
season
Okay.
4 and had to write part 2.
Ah,
So he's like,
brilliant.
shit. Now I have to write myself out of this fucking this little corner I put myself in.
Corner has written himself
But
into.
he does.
Yeah.
I think he does a fairly good job of writing himself out.
Yeah.
But that
No, I.
became a fairly standard thing of even if it's the same writers. Yeah, because they basically like, well, we'll deal with that later. Because obviously we're at the end of a season. Let's do a nice finale. Let's set up stuff. I mean, DS9 is not quite like that because I know, for instance, they've got more of an idea of what they're doing, of where they're going,
Yeah.
as it were, as a general sense. But I do know, for instance, at the end of season 3, they set something up because they're ready to do the big on Dominion thing. Let's really go for it. But then the execs got involved, like the big suits, saying, "Oh, we need to bring Klingons in. We need to raise the interest in this show." And so then, of course, they bring Worf in, and it derails their plan a wee bit before they can actually get back on track.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah, it's network TV. Apparently, it's an absolute bitch to work for sometimes.
Yeah.
Although,
So I wonder,
personally,
like on Voyager, Scorpion, and that's end of season 3 of Voyager, isn't it? Scorpion Part 1.
Yes.
So I wonder if they
Yes.
did the same there and didn't know how they were
Yes.
gonna work their way out of that.
Well,
Blimey.
I'm assuming they must have done because they called it Scorpion. Because bear in mind, it was called Scorpion. It was all based on that parable of a scorpion getting a lift across the water on the dog's back or wherever it was, and it stings the dog because it's a scorpion, and that's its instinct. Because that's obviously the resolution to part 2. So they must have had an idea at this time. So I don't know. Maybe they just finally got to the point where they kind of like, well, if we're going to do a season finale cliffhanger thing, then let's think ahead a bit. Maybe they finally realized that's probably a smart thing to do by that point.
Yeah.
But no, when I first started with two-parters...
It may be different if I worked in network television, but not. I can't imagine being asked to write something that was going to build to a cliffhanger without any kind of idea how, whether it was me or someone else writing the resolution.
I was going to say,
didn't have a clue how they're going to get out of it, and just think that
you
seems.
Say that. See, you say that, but it's not dissimilar to what we did with An Ordinary Man. When you think about it. Because I had a general idea of where I wanted the story to go, and I was like, well, these are my general ideas. Good luck.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I personally, as a writer, and I don't know, you may feel differently, but just through the whole process of Left with Stuart and the various issues along the way, I've always enjoyed the whole, well, how do I get out of this? The challenge of it in a way. So I don't know. I think what the writers of this show and Star Trek generally of network TV at this time, some of the stuff they went through, I don't know, I think I would probably enjoy a challenge of it a wee bit.
Yeah.
Of the whole, right, creativity, let's get creative. What do we do? Because it challenges your creativity.
Yes.
And
yeah, there is that.
I don't know. But as I said, this was obviously how it, 2 parts,
Yeah.
But obviously with this one, they obviously knew what they were doing. So they knew the plan, which is good. And I think it shows when you're watching this, you can feel they've obviously going somewhere with this. And I think it's paced quite well as well.
I think for me, that
benefits a lot.
That side of it will probably be easier to judge having watched part 2 in 2 weeks' time. So
yeah, for sure.
be able to
what I like
look
about
back on it.
Another thing I like about this episode, it's like we said with the trilogy that opened this season, which seems so long ago now. It does, doesn't it? It's only 20 episodes ago. Is that when they do have a multi-part story, or 2, 3, whatever it be, is it gives them a chance to let the story breathe and develop. They don't have to rush to a resolution. And I think Star Trek really benefits from that. Certainly DS9 benefits because obviously they usually have a whole lot of plates in the air at the same time. And I think DS9 in particular benefits from not having to rush to a resolution all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I think it works anyway.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I don't think you can kind of see potentially in this episode some bits that could possibly have been trimmed if they'd needed to be, but I think you'd have ended up with you'd end up with a single episode that would have felt very rushed, rather than 2 episodes. Certainly this first episode, the pace was good, and the kind of the atmosphere and the drama was certainly building quite nicely towards the end. Anyway, I think that would have been, we would have lost a lot of that if they tried to squeeze this and whatever's in the second episode into one. Okay, I imagine that all of the Quark stuff would have gone, and there would just have potentially just been referenced in a line. There would have been it would have been a throwaway line about getting the all of the arms from Quarks and stuff. And yes, you'd have probably lost a lot of stuff from the beginning. Some of the conversation between Dax and Kira, Kira and was it Kira and O'Brien, or was it Dax and O'Brien that went off in the runabout? One or the other. The scene in the runabout at the beginning with O'Brien sort of scanning the wreckage and the debris. That probably would have gone as well. But it's actually nice. It's nice to have gone through that, and because it just it allows the audience to kind of go through the story and hit certain story points at the same time as the characters without you finding at some point you've suddenly got to play catch up with where the characters are, because they've all got a lot more information than you have. Or you have that awkward situation where someone comes in and goes, "Well, as I told you earlier, blah 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 blah." That's just which it works now and again. It's all right now and again, but So
and if we'd lost all that Quark stuff, then if we'd lost all that Quark stuff, then we would have lost all the stuff with that Vulcan woman. So you would get so the
she's an interesting
thing. Lose. Yeah,
she's an interesting background character.
Gun runner, it's definitely because Vulcans, of course, are very much about peace and logic and all this. So the fact that this one in particular, sees the logic of what's going on with the Marquis and has tied a banner to them, it makes it interesting from a viewer point of view, because then you're like, okay, well maybe the Marquis you can sympathise, because you're like, well, if the Vulcan can sympathise, then obviously there's something good about what they're doing, or logical at least.
Yes, because at this point there's the Vulcan that turns bad, as it were, in Undiscovered Country, isn't there? There's the who's part of the. She's part of the
Valeris, yes.
Yeah, he was going to.
Yeah, she's part.
I think I read somewhere it was going to be Savick, but then they decided they didn't want to sully her character, so they brought a new one.
It was, but for some reason, Roddenberry didn't like the idea of it, even though he didn't create the character of her. Yeah. He didn't like the idea of it. Whereas I'm like, again, it shows Roddenberry's. I think it shows shows Roddenberry's lack of understanding character conflict. It's
Is this at this point? Is this the only other Vulcan? Is this the only other Vulcan that we've encountered?
No, we've had loads of Vulcans
side of the tracks potentially.
Oh no, we've had some slightly dodgy Vulcans over the years. We'll have way more in the future of Star Trek. So many more. We've got one in Picard who's an actual gangster, but it's logical apparently, and I'm like, is it? But Star Trek writers and the understanding of logic is
Yes.
They I don't think Star Trek writers quite understand what logic actually means. It's like, that's not really what logic means, but fine, we'll go with it. But no, again, she's interesting. Now, this scene behind us right now, this is a good scene as well.
We don't know much. We don't really know much about her, but it's I think that it's easier when she pops up in those little moments when she's not with Quark. It's easier to kind of accept what she's doing there because of the scenes that we've had with her and Quark. So we're more accustomed to her, even though we know absolutely nothing about her. I'm not even sure we know her name, do we?
Yeah, we do, but I can't tell you what it is because
I can't remember what her name is.
Don't know.
I think she may have told Quark.
So we may not know much about her, probably, but we may not know much about her as such as a person, but at least we get to know her reasoning, as it were. whether we agree with it or not. So yeah, like you say, so when we see her outside of the Quark stuff, at least we have some understanding of it. And speaking of understanding, the scene that's playing behind me right now is I don't know
Yes,
if you
it
can
was a
see
good
it,
scene.
Kira and O'Brien. Cisco. That was good. It's always nice when Cisco gets a good slap from Kira verbally, and a reminder that as much as she's changed, she will speak her mind,
Yeah.
and she will still make it very clear that she still thinks Starfleet and the Federation are fucking naive and stupid. And that's
Yeah.
good. It's consistent.
Yes, it is. It is. It's and like you said, it's a good reminder, without without having a situation forced, or having an awkward
Yeah.
conversation that thrown in at the beginning of an episode that doesn't bear any that doesn't bear any relation to the to the rest of the episode. So it's just
As if
but yeah,
Star Trek would do that.
indeed.
Cool. Well, I think it's one of those moments of it's a one of a part two, so there's only so much we can talk about it without knowledge of what's coming up.
Exactly.
So give it some final thoughts then. What are your final take on this then?
An enjoyable episode, raising lots of thoughtful points, and leaving us at a moment that made me really want to see what happens next. That's basically it.
All good. All good.
Yeah.
And for me then, again, I think I enjoy that it's a two-parter because you get a chance to let the story breathe. And I appreciate the world building that's going on in the larger sense of Star Trek, and the idea that if you haven't watched Next Gen, you still get a sense of it's all part of one thing, and that's kind of nice without it being the obvious. It's not the obvious continuity and cameos and name drops and it's just natural world building that makes you feel like they're all part of one universe, because they are. And yeah, I like it. I think it does a good job. I think ultimately it's a little bit sanitized for what it's actually the story is telling, though. I think it's Star Trek, and I think if this story was being told today in Star Trek, it would be so much darker and so much more brutal as well. But that's 1994 TV Star Trek compared to 2024 TV Star Trek. And speaking of 1994, I've got two on this day
nuggets,
in Star Trek history. Some nuggets.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, first of all, Michael Piller, who's one of the storyliners and co-creators of Voyager and DS9. As I said before, the Marquis was designed to be part of the whole Voyager premise. This is all the build-up. But he actually has said that, he went on record saying that DS9 is a true inheritor of the Marquis, since there was no long-term benefit on Voyager, which is interesting, that he created something to set up Voyager, but as it turned out, actually it works better on DS9. Because, again, it's basically admitting that Voyager has this wonderful idea, but he never actually stick the landing on anything. So DS9 did instead. But
fair enough.
on this day, as in the 17th of February, on this day in 1987, this is quite an interesting one for just general Star Trek. The first draft script for the very first TNG episode was delivered on this day in 1987, which is interesting.
87.
But more interesting, and again, 1987.
Gosh. I thought it was a bit earlier than that. I'm surprised by that.
Yep, that's when. No, Next Gen started in 87. Yeah, we got it in 88, but it started in late 87 in the States. Yeah. But yes, but on this day in 1994, so we're talking 17th of February, the final draft script for the Marquis Part 2 was submitted. And again, remember last time we had something like this, was another script was submitted like literally like 2 months or whatever it was before the episode aired. And here we are
I know,
again.
that's
The script for Marquis Part 2 was only ended on the 7th of February, and yet it would have been transmitted at the end of April. So that's
that's
fast
seat of the
turnaround.
pants television. That's we've got 2 months to get this from script to screen. That's quite mad. It seems quite mad anyway.
It does, but then we consider some of the stuff we've had to turn around quickly. It's like, is it that mad? You know,
Well, yeah,
we've all had to turn stuff around really quick, and we know it's like, oh God, quick, right, publish it. I haven't had a chance to look at it. Fine. You know, it's no different, is it really?
No, I suppose in the grand scheme of things, it's the same but different, similar but whatever. So yeah, no, it's fair enough. So next week,
let's focus. Shit. Next week,
we're back on Who. We are episodes 1 to 3 of The Keys of Marinus.
Correctamundo.
I can't remember what they're all called, but we'll find out at the time. But we're back in the world of Terry Nation.
I believe the first one's called The Keys of Marinus. I feel sure.
Are you sure that's not the last episode?
Is it? That might be the last one. Is the first one like the Poison Sea or something?
Poison Sea or something like that. There's because there's like acid, isn't there? They're on an island and it's surrounded by
like that.
Acid. Yeah, so we'll we'll look those up. But it's so that's next week. And I can't remember who directed it either. It might be interesting if it's John Gorrie. I know he directed some early ones, but because I've been watching other stuff that John Gorrie's directed on TV this week. I've been watching a 1975 ITV series called Edward VII with Timothy West as King Edward VII, and John Gorrie directed that. And I'm looking at it thinking, oh yeah, he directed some early Doctor Who. He's going to come up soon in our watch. So, but I shall find out between now and then. Look it up.
We shall find out.
I haven't seen Keys of Marinus for a few years, so that'll be interesting.
I haven't seen it since my last watch, so I guess that would be a good 2 years ago since I've seen it.
Possibly watched it.
So yeah, that'll be interesting.
Watched it more recently than I have.
My recollection of Marinus. It's one of those. It's okay episode. It's not amazing, but it's okay. You know. But again, we'll see. A few might change. You know, because that's happened many times before where a rewatch you're like, ooh, I quite like it more now, or I like it less now.
Yes.
It can happen. Anyway, that's us for this week.
It is.
We'll be back next week, as we said. In the meantime, catch us on all our usual social medias. Until then, I've been Andy.
I've been Tim.
He's been Tim, and so we will catch you next time.
It's so cheesy.
That was Cal Hudson. We'll catch you next time. Anyway, let's do our traditional goodbye now. Okay. Bye-bye, Duggan.
Bye-bye.